Hi, it's Kim Halsey, and I'm just here to talk to you about the trouble with 12 step in regards to sponsorship, the word sponsor in itself. I've been talking to a lot of people this week who have horror stories, some of them, about the trouble with 12 step, the thing that turned them off about recovery, the things they couldn't quite get on board with, whether it was the number of meetings or the concepts of God, or the idea of a sponsor telling you what to do, or the rote of what to eat during your recovery. And so I figured we'd just dissect those one a week. And so this week I want to talk about the word sponsor. The word is not used in the big book at all. Sponsor is a fellowship term, and I haven't done the research to know exactly when it was coined, but I can tell you that in the dictionary, to sponsor means to be responsible for. And that explains why when I would go to AA meetings, and my issue was always disordered eating, but when I would go to AA meetings because I thought they had better recovery, I would hear sponsors gossiping about their sponsees and calling them babies, their babies, and treating them like they were babies. And so I was fortunate in my journey through OA, particularly, but the first sponsor I had was a steps only sponsor. And all she did was take me through the steps, and all we did was work them, so that I had been through all of my steps within the first year. And then I decided, I had learned about all I thought I could learn from her, and it was time to change sponsors. Now, if you've ever been in the 12-step circuit, then you know what it's like to change sponsors. You feel guilty, you feel ashamed. Maybe you have a sponsor who's healthy enough to move you the next direction or let you go, but sometimes you get fired, or you're afraid of getting fired if you don't do it right. The other thing that happens sometimes from sponsors, they can only take you as far as they've gone. And so many times in the fellowship, they like to practice the 1, 2, 3, 12 step. So they come in, they admit powerless, they find their strength in numbers in the meetings and telling their stories, and then they move out to help other people because somebody told them along the way that they could just, it was okay as long as you stayed one step ahead of the other person. But before long, you discover as a sponsee that they never did finish their 4th step, or they never did finish amends. So they can't really guide you through. You can't transmit something you don't have. You can't take people where you haven't been or where you're afraid to go. And so in that case, when you leave a sponsor, you do what they tell you to do in the fellowship, which is that you look for somebody who has what you want. If you've decided you want what we have, the big book says, and you're willing to go to any length to get there, then you're ready to take certain steps. Some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. So when I decided to leave that sponsor and I got over myself enough to actually go look for one, I went to find the one who had lost the most amount of weight and looked like she was working a really good program, right up until I got to know her a little bit. And then I found out that honestly, there were worse things than being fat and crazy. You could be thin and crazy instead, because for her, it was all about weighing and measuring and rigidity and compliance, and other areas of her life were totally unmanageable. And she was hanging on to the control of the food as a way to be okay, as a way to improve her worth. So it was at that point that I was ready to walk away from 12-step completely. And I went to a public information night, and there came a recovered alcoholic. And yes, she used the word recovered, past tense. And she relayed her story to me after the meeting. And I asked her to be my next sponsor. And that is where I found the promises of the program. It is not focusing on the symptom, it's focusing on the solution. It is finding somebody in a sponsor who is trained and treated, not just knows the jargon, and not just has their symptoms under control. There is such a thing as a dry drunk, and they're not much fun to be around either. So when you start to look at the sponsor, and you only sponsor the way you were sponsored oftentimes, and by the grace of God, I've had 2 wonderful sponsors in my life, and the last one, she only took me through the big book, page by page, line by line, with the dictionary. What did they mean in 1934 when they wrote the book compared to what we think that means now? And by the time we got through the first 103 pages, which is where the program that applied to me was, then I had that spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. It brought with me, the problem had been removed. It no longer existed for me. It didn't matter anymore how many days I'd been abstinent or how many pounds I'd lost or how many people I'd sponsored, because it turned out all of those were ego-driven counting progress. And the odd thing is when God did for me what I couldn't do for myself, I lost count. I didn't have to count anymore. There was a freedom, a new joy, and a new happiness. And the 12-step work that comes out of that is the kind that transforms my life every time I work with someone, and their life every time they hear it. So as you're looking for a sponsor, as you're deciding if 12-step meetings are the route you want to go, then the book gives us some guidelines about what it means to be a trusted friend, to hear a 5th-step inventory, to walk somebody through the trauma that brought them to the place of medicating pain, right? And so it's into action in the big book, and it says we are looking for somebody we know who is a closed-mouthed, understanding friend. Maybe a doctor or a psychologist, maybe somebody in your own family. But the important thing is that we cannot get our recovery at somebody else's expense. So I'm looking for somebody who will understand what I have to say, but be unaffected by it. I might have a really understanding mother, but when she hears about my romantic escapades or my drug history, she won't be unaffected by that. So she is not the person to take my inventory to. And it says somewhere else in the big book that there has to be one person we can be honest with in this world. We have to tell our story to God, ourselves, and another human being. And it has to be the same story all 3 times. I can't have 3 different sponsors and I give you this piece of my life story and you this piece and you this piece, so that nobody ever gets to see the sum total of who I am, including me. I get to hide behind the things you don't know, and I'm still leading that double life of being one person to you and who do you want me to be, and I can't remember exactly what I told you the last time. So there's always that double life, and it is the double life that leads us back to our addiction. So if you need have more questions, or you need more information about how to find this person who will be able to walk you through the steps, let me know. If you're interested in a big book study, I think I'm going to do one of those over on Clubhouse as well. Clubhouse is turning out to be a very anonymous, good way to be authentic and real time. And I'm loving that. It's a lot less work than any training I've ever done, or the reason why I stopped working with alcoholics in the first place, which was that there's just so much denial to break through in the corporate world. It's a lot of work. This is not for that. The people who are drawn to the Trouble with 12-step are people who've already been through the 12-step ringer. They've been on the pink cloud. They've fallen off the pink cloud. They've seen behind the curtain at the wizard pulling the strings. And they're understanding that, yes, every meeting is different, but why do I have to go? Why do I have to trade this addiction for that addiction? Why do I have to go to 6 different meetings to find one that I can grow as much as the meeting will allow before I get stopped from any new thought? So open your minds, expand your experience. If you haven't already done it, read the first 103 pages of the big book, and let us know what you think. Questions about sponsors, just hit me up in the messages below, and we'll talk about it. Thanks. See you soon.